Okay, let's talk about something that's sensitive, but so important, depression. Today we're going to look at a really different perspective on it, one that sees it less as a condition you just have to manage and more as a mental habit that you can actually reprogram. It's a pretty powerful idea, and we're going to break down exactly how it's supposed to work. And hey, just a quick heads up, this explainer is all about this specific viewpoint from our source material, and it's definitely not a substitute for professional medical advice.
So let's just dive right in with the big question that our source poses. Is depression a disease, or could it be an unconscious habit? I mean, just think about that for a second. This one question really flips the script on the usual way we think about it. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, what we call depression is a pattern the mind has learned, and if it can be learned, well, that means it can be unlearned.
So, first things first, let's dig into this idea that depression might be, at its core, a kind of misconception.
Okay, so our source makes a really key distinction here. Sadness, that's a normal human feeling, right? It comes and it goes. But depression, that's what happens when we grab onto that sad feeling and just refuse to let it go. When we overthink it, analyze it, and replay it in our minds over and over again. It's that overthinking that cements it, that makes it stick around and feel permanent.
And this, right here, really lays out that big shift in thinking. When you see depression as a disease, it can feel like something that's just happening to you, right? Like you're not in the driver's seat. But if you start to see it as an unconscious habit, an ingrained pattern, well, that changes everything. That puts the power back in your hands. It means it's something you can actively work to change.
Okay, so if we're calling it a habit, how in the world does that habit even get started? Let's move on and look at the mechanics behind what our source calls the mind's programming.
The term the source uses is self-hypnosis. And no, we're not talking about swinging pocket watches or any of that stage show stuff. This is about something we all do all the time, usually without even realizing it. It's the process of programming our own subconscious minds through that constant loop of thoughts, the words we tell ourselves, and that cycle of overthinking we just talked about. So how does this whole self-hypnosis thing actually happen? Well, it breaks down into 3 simple steps. First, your mind has to be in a very receptive state, which is called the alpha state. Second, you introduce a negative script, those looping pessimistic thoughts. And third, you do it over and over. It's that repetition that finally locks the script into your subconscious and creates the habit.
And this is what that negative script can sound like, you know? These are the kinds of thoughts that can get stuck on a loop. My life is useless. My luck is bad. Nothing will ever work out for me. When these become the instructions we feed our mind day in and day out, they start to feel like reality. All right, so we mentioned 3 steps, but that first one, the alpha state, is absolutely crucial. It's the gateway. So let's zoom in on that for a second. What exactly is it?
Think about that fuzzy, dreamy state you're in right as you're drifting off to sleep or when you're just waking up. That's the alpha state. It's a totally natural brainwave frequency where your critical, analytical mind kind of takes a nap, and that opens up a direct line to your subconscious. It's when your mind is most open, most ready to accept new ideas without arguing.
And here's the crazy part. You're in this state every single day without even trying. It happens right before you fall asleep. It happens again right after you wake up when you're still kind of groggy. And it even happens when you're just sitting and daydreaming. These are the moments when your subconscious is basically leaning in, listening with its full attention.
Okay, so we've talked about the problem, how this whole negative programming works. But what about the solution? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. This is where we learn how to flip the script using something our source calls positive reverse programming.
And the logic behind it is actually super straightforward. It's like, if you can program your mind one way, you can absolutely reprogram it the other way. If the problem was created by repeatedly feeding your mind a negative script in that alpha state, then the solution is to use that exact same process, but with a positive script.
So, what does one of these positive scripts actually sound like? Well, here's a great example. Notice how it acknowledges the struggle, but the focus is on strength, on gradual progress, and on hope. The key is to create a script that really feels true and empowering for you. All right, theory is great, but let's get practical. How do you actually do this? Our source lays out a really clear, actionable 14-day plan. Let's walk through it together.
Here's the step-by-step. It's all about catching yourself in those key moments we talked about. Right before sleep, right after you wake up, you find a quiet moment, you let yourself get into that relaxed alpha state, you close your eyes, and you just mentally repeat the positive script you've created for yourself.
So let's break down the formula. There are a few key numbers to remember. The first one is 14.
You commit to doing this for 14 days in a row, no skipping. That consistency is what builds the momentum.
Next up is the number 3. You're going to do this 3 times every single day, specifically targeting those natural alpha state windows, when you wake up, when you go to bed, and maybe during a quiet break in the afternoon.
And the final number in our little formula is 7. Each time you sit down to do this, you repeat your positive script 7 times. So remember, 14 days, 3 times a day, 7 repetitions. That's the formula that really drives the new message home to your subconscious.
And the whole point of all this, the end goal, it's simple: to consciously and systematically overwrite those old automatic negative instructions with new ones that are positive and empowering.
Okay, but there's one last, really crucial tip. You can't just do the exercise and then let your mind wander back into old habits for the rest of the day. You have to actively keep your mind occupied with positive things. Reading a good book, making plans for the future, getting lost in a creative project. Because, an idle mind, it's just so easy for it to slip back into those old, familiar negative grooves.
So that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. This whole perspective suggests that we are literally the programmers of our own minds. Whether we're doing it on purpose or not, we're always feeding it a script. So the real question is, what script are you going to give your mind today?